بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. One of the most forgotten and undervalued and underappreciated and under-recognized people of our societies are our teachers. If it weren't for our teachers, then there may not be a society for us to build, because after all, we need a guide. So whether that teacher is in school or in madrasa, they don't often get the recognition that they truly deserve. Such is the importance of the position of the teacher that they can have a profound and influential effect on our lives. For example, one of the Umayyad Caliphs, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, was influenced heavily by his teacher. One day as a child, he was in the presence of his teacher and he uttered curses on the name of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He did so as a matter of habit because Muawiyah had ordered that Imam Ali's name be cursed from the mimbar for many years, and so for him this was something that was natural. But one day when he did so, his teacher frowned, and upon seeing his teacher frown, he asked his teacher why he was frowning. When his teacher reminded him of the position of Imam Ali, this had a profound effect on his life, and one day when he became the Caliph, he ordered that the cursing of Imam Ali be stopped. Therefore, the effect of the love of the Ahlul Bayt in the heart of the teacher transpired into the heart of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and this led him to stop the cursing. If it wasn't for the effect of his teacher, then, God forbid, the cursing may have continued for many more years. Likewise, another teacher of one of the Umayyad Caliphs whom we don't usually hear about was the teacher of Muawiyah ibn Yazid, the son of Yazid. Muawiyah ibn Yazid was a lover of the Ahlul Bayt, but how is that even possible? His father firstly was Yazid. Secondly, he was surrounded in an environment which hated the Ahlul Bayt. So how did he become a lover of the Ahlul Bayt? We find that he was influenced by his teacher by the name of Umar al-Maqsus. His teacher loved the Ahlul Bayt, and his love transpired into the heart of Muawiyah ibn Yazid. When Muawiyah ibn Yazid became the Caliph, 3 days later he abdicated and said that this position doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Zainul Abidin. Marwan, his uncle, naturally was astonished and he tried to dissuade him, but Muawiyah ibn Yazid refused. Upon investigation, Marwan found out that it was because of his teacher that Muawiyah ibn Yazid acted like this, and so he had his teacher buried alive. So therefore we can see that the effect a teacher can have on an individual or upon society is great, and therefore it's important for us to consider this topic with the following points in mind. Who is a teacher and what are his qualities? What are the rights of the teacher? Number 2. Number 3, how can we respect our teachers? Number 4, what are the responsibilities of the teacher to the taught? Because although they have a great position in society, they also do have a responsibility. And number 5, what have the Ahlul Bayt said in reference to teachers? And inshallah, we will conclude with a short masa'ib. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The question of who is a teacher can quickly be answered by Imam Ali alayhi salam when he said, "Whoever has taught me a single letter has made me his slave." This means that anyone who is able to teach something is under the obedience of the person who has taught him. And why the use of the term slave? It's because the slave is in need of his master for everything that he requires, and therefore the person who learns from another person, he has become the slave of that person. So therefore anyone can be a teacher as long as we have something to teach. It can be something as small as wudu. For example, for us it might be small, but for a new Muslim, learning how to do wudu is a big thing and a great thing, something that's needed for their daily lives, for their prayers. But now that we know what a teacher is, it's important for us to know what the qualities of a teacher are so that we may choose our teachers wisely. There are a number of qualities mentioned in traditions, however, we'll go through just a few of them. The first quality of a teacher is kindness. Kindness is extremely important and obvious at most times, but Allah in the Quran says to Rasulullah in Surah Al Imran that if he did not have kindness, if his heart was full of harshness, then the people would have abandoned him, meaning that he would not be able to convey his message if he did not have kindness, if he did not have a soft heart. So therefore, kindness is extremely important. Kindness has many aspects. Number one, firstly, kindness attracts positive energy. It creates positive energy in the person who is kind, and it also attracts other people of positive energy to that person. Therefore, that person is surrounded in a positive environment all the time. Number two, being kind also creates a comfortable and loving atmosphere, and this is very important for two reasons. The first is people of positive energy, once they surround another person of positive energy, the student in that environment is then very lucky because he is surrounded in an environment where he is consistently in the flow of positive energy, and this aids him to learn. And number two, positive energy creates a loving atmosphere and love between two individuals, and when two individuals love each other, it's very easy for them to communicate and convey their communications, to convey what they want to say to each other. So therefore, kindness is a very important quality of a teacher. The second important quality of a teacher is communication. A teacher must be able to communicate well so that he's able to convey what he wants to convey, not just so that he can pass on a message. And communication is also important because sometimes we say something, but to another person, something else is understood. So communication is very important. And communication has a number of aspects. The first aspect of conveying knowledge is language. Language is extremely important. For example, if someone was to use bad language or filthy language, that has a negative effect, not just on the person being conveyed to, but also on themselves. Why? Because once you use profane language, it creates a negative environment in you, and anything that you pass on to others will then be passed on in a negative manner. The next aspect of language is that it should be spoken to at the level of people. If, for example, we spoke to people in a manner which was too high for them to understand, then they will leave without understanding what the message actually was. And the prophets and the Ahlul Bayt were experts in this field. So, for example, we might have seen many hadith in which they seem simple enough to us, but for some people it meant the entire religion for them. So, for example, a man had come to Rasulullah and he asked him, "What is the religion of Islam?" And the Prophet said to him, "Refrain from anger, refrain from anger, refrain from anger." That man went away satisfied. His companions were astounded. They thought, "Rasulullah, the religion of Islam is more than this." But Rasulullah said for him it was enough. So therefore, it's important to speak to the public in a manner that they will understand, or at the level that they will understand. And the third aspect of language is when you speak in a language, it's important to speak in a language that people will understand. This isn't the same point as the previous. What I mean over here is it's important to speak in a language that is the language of the people. So for example, it could be English, it could be Urdu, it could be Gujarati, it could be Swahili, it could be anything. And the reason why this is important is because when you speak in a language that the person understands, then you've already won them. And language is half the work, really, because if, for example, I was to start speaking in Farsi, then it's possible that almost nobody would understand. Maybe a few people would, but nobody would. So language is half the work. Once you speak in a language that the people understand, then the other half is just to convey the message. So the three aspects of communicating well is: don't use bad language, speak in a language at the level of the people, and number three, speak in a language that is understandable to the people. And when communicating, it's also important to be wise. Wisdom is something that's not easily achieved, and it does come through many years of experience. However, when someone has it, they are a very wonderful person and an asset to any community. For example, wisdom doesn't have to be the ability to say something extraordinary. It is simply knowing what to say and what not to say. So, for example, if we see someone in the community, whether they're a youth or an elder, and they engage in a bad habit, for example, smoking, there are many ways that we can tackle this. We can either go head on and start cursing the person towards them and say, you're a bad person because you're smoking, and therefore you're a bad representation of this community, etc., etc. This will only have a negative effect on that person, and it's very unwise. Another method is to speak softly with love and kindness. So we can say something like, you're a responsible person and you're looked up in this community. If you start acting in this way, then what can we say about the others? So you'll notice that language is very important, but it's important when we're wise as well. You might have heard of the saying, a wise person has something to say, but a fool has to say something. So it's important that we watch our language and be wise. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Therefore, now that we're aware of some of the qualities of a teacher, it's important for us to know what their rights are, because everyone has rights. And Imam Sajjad alayhi salam has an amazing work called Risalat al-Huquq. In this work, he has mentioned the rights of almost everything that we can think of. For example, the rights of God, the rights of the self, the rights of the mother, father, the tongue, the legs, even the rights of the eyes. So, likewise, there is also the rights of the teacher. And in Risalat al-Huquq, he has mentioned 10 rights of the teacher. And it's a lengthy tradition, however, I've broken it down. So I'm going to list them, and inshallah, we'll talk about some of them in the next point. He says that the rights of the teacher, one, are to magnify them. Not just magnify them by speaking good about them, but to magnify them in our minds also, to think highly of them. Why? Because they are teachers. Number two, to respect his classes. Number three, to listen to him well. Number four, to attend to him with devotion. Number five, to avoid raising your voice against him. Number six, to avoid answering a question before he answers. You know, sometimes when we're sitting in a class or a discussion circle and someone asks a question, it might be an easy question for us. Therefore, our reaction is straight away to put our hands up or sometimes just to let it out. But if our teacher is in front of us, then his right and respect is to allow him to answer. So, avoid answering a question before he answers. Number seven, to avoid talking when he is teaching. This is extremely important because talking whilst a teacher is talking does many things. For example, it ruins his concentration. And concentration is extremely important for a teacher when he's teaching, because if he loses his concentration, then it disturbs the flow of the class. Another disturbance is also it affects yourself and the person around you. For example, you might have noticed when we're in a class and the teacher is talking and someone starts talking to you, or they start talking around you and the teacher's just mentioned a point but we've missed it because that person was talking. So talking causes disturbance. So it's important to avoid talking whilst he is teaching. Number 8, don't backbite in front of him. Number 9, defend him when someone backbites him. Backbiting is a detested act, and one of our responsibilities when we're in a circle and someone starts backbiting is, number 1, either to leave the discussion completely, or number 2, if we know the individual, then it's our responsibility to defend that individual. to bring up his good points. And that brings us on to the 10th right, which is to cover his flaws. Everyone has flaws because we're all human. Only the imams are perfect. So cover his flaws and make public his good traits. So now that we're aware of the rights of the teacher, it's important to respect our teachers. And how can we respect them in the best of ways? Well, the first way to respect them is to appreciate them. Appreciation goes a long way, especially because a teacher has chosen to impart what he knows. And appreciation doesn't have to be anything big. It can be something as simple as a thank you. Even better than a thank you, it is also the attendance of his classes. If a teacher, for example, has a session at 9 o'clock, I remember at university, some of our classes were at 9 a.m. in the morning, and our next class after that would be at 3 p.m. There'd be a 5-hour gap between classes, and this would bring up the question, should we go to one class or not? But it's important to remember that that teacher also has that 9 a.m. start, and in order to appreciate him, it's important that we attend his classes. Number 2, the second way to respect our teachers in the best of ways is to respect their classes. And this isn't just by attending their classes, but it's by attending their classes with preparation. So, for example, it's important that we have our pens, our papers, our laptops. It's important that we've covered the material that needs to be covered, etc. And number 3, it's important to listen to him well. A teacher has planned and prepared his class, and planning and preparing takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort. So it's important to listen to him well when he speaks. So what are the responsibilities of the teacher to the taught? The teacher has a great position in society, and therefore with greatness comes responsibility also. One of the responsibilities of the teacher is to treat his students as if they are his own children. Once a teacher does this, he persists with that child, persists with that person, no matter how difficult it might be. For example, the mother and father love their children a lot, and therefore even if that child is being difficult, they'll still persist with them. Or even if they see that they're lacking in something, so for example, if they're not good at something, they won't give up. So the teacher should be just as if he is the parent of that child or is the parent of that student. The second responsibility of the teacher is to not humiliate his student. Humiliation can have disastrous effects in 2 ways. Firstly, it can discourage that student from learning, and secondly, it can discourage that student from asking questions, especially if it's a question which may be simple to us or simple to the teacher, but not very simple to the student himself. A very famous Chinese proverb goes like this: he who asks a question is a fool, but for 5 minutes only. He who doesn't ask the question is a fool forever. So it's important that we not humiliate students so that they can be encouraged to ask questions. And let's move on to the next point of what the Ahlul Bayt have now said about the importance of teachers in our societies. They have mentioned much, but due to time constraints, and we also have Mazaher to come to, we'll mention just 2. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, salawatu ala Muhammad, has said that the best form of charity is for a person to gain knowledge and then teach it to his fellow brother. So in this month of Ramadan, when sometimes there are fundraising events happening, but our pockets may be empty, we don't always carry change with us, one of the ways to give charity is to teach something to someone that we may have learned during the day. And likewise, Imam Baqir alayhi salam has taught us that teachers are the owners of Thawab Jariyah. He says that he who teaches someone a matter of guidance receives the same reward as the person who practices it. So therefore, if I teach someone Bismillah, that person, when he says Bismillah, gains the reward for Bismillah, and I also gain the reward for Bismillah without any loss to either of us. Please recite Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Being a Thursday night, it's important to remember Imam Husayn and the tragedy of Karbala. The tragedy of Karbala is the greatest of tragedies, but let's do something different and ask a question. Why is the tragedy of Karbala considered to be the greatest of tragedies? As in, if we look at Islamic history, there are so many tragedies that occurred during the lives of the Prophet and during the lives of the Ahlul Bayt. For example, the loss of the Prophet, the martyrdom of the Prophet from this world was a great tragedy in itself. The burning of the door of Fatima and the crushing of her ribs was a great tragedy in itself. Imam Rida alayhi salam has said that the event of Fakh, if it was not for Karbala, the event of Fakh would be the greatest tragedy. Do you know what the event of Fakh was? The event of Fakh was when the Abbasid Khalif al-Hadi gathered the sons of Imam Hassan, lined them up and slaughtered them one after another until the streets of Baghdad were flowing with the blood of Ali Muhammad. So therefore, why is the event of Karbala the greatest of tragedies? This is answered eloquently by Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He has said that the people of the Kisa were five. They were Muhammad, Fatima, Ali, Hassan and Husayn. When Muhammad left this world, the people still had the four to console themselves with. When Fatima left, the people still had the three left to console themselves with. When Ali left, the people still had Hassan and Husayn. When Hassan left, the people still had Husayn. But when Husayn left, the people did not have anyone left to console themselves with, because he was the last remnant of Rasulullah who had seen Rasulullah. When they killed Imam Husayn on the plains of Karbala, they were also killing Rasulullah. They were also killing Fatima. They were also killing Ali. They were also killing Hassan, and they killed Husayn. But others may ask, what about Imam Zainul Abidin? He was also there. Yes, Imam Zainul Abidin is Ma'soom. He is the Imam. But he did not see Rasulullah just like Imam Husayn saw him. When Imam Zainul Abidin would quote a narration from Rasulullah, he would say, I heard from my father who heard from Rasulullah. But Imam Husayn was able to say, I heard from my father who heard from my father who heard from Rasulullah, or I heard from Rasulullah who heard from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please recite Surah Fatiha, but before it allow salawat.
توجه زيارة واردة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله.